You think space is empty, a quiet stage where things simply move. You imagine speed as a personal choice. Go faster if you have better engines. Slow down if you don't. You think the universe doesn't care how fast you go. That limits come from technology, from weakness, from design flaws. That's the picture in your head. It feels obvious. It feels neutral. It's wrong. Space is not a passive backdrop. It does not politely allow motion. It enforces rules. There is a number you are not allowed to cross. Not because of fuel, not because of mass, not because of engineering, because reality itself refuses. You think a speed limit is a constraint on objects, on rockets, on particles. It isn't. It's a constraint on space, on time, on what it even means for events to happen. And once you see that, distance stops being distance. Now stops being now. Reality quietly rewrites itself and doesn't ask whether you're comfortable with that. You assume speed is a matter of effort. Push harder, go faster. That intuition comes from everyday life, where resistance feels negotiable. A bicycle becomes a motorcycle becomes a jet becomes a rocket. Each step reinforces the same story. Speed is unlocked by power. If something is slow, it is underpowered. If something is fast, it has learned how to overcome its limitations. This feels so natural that you rarely question it. But physics does, because at a certain point, adding energy stops doing what you think it does. Not gradually, not reluctantly, fundamentally. In everyday motion, energy buys speed. Double the energy, roughly double the speed. The math is forgiving. The intuition holds. Then you approach the cosmic speed limit. And suddenly, energy stops behaving like fuel. You can pour it in endlessly. The speed barely responds. This is not friction. There is no drag. There is no medium resisting you. Space itself is saying no. This is the first uncomfortable realization. The limit has nothing to do with engines. Even a perfect engine fails. Even in empty space, with nothing to slow you down, acceleration begins to feel pointless. You work harder. You get less. This is not because motion becomes difficult. It is because faster starts to lose meaning. At low speeds, velocity is a simple number, 10 meters per second, 100, 1,000. But near the limit, speed stops stacking linearly. It resists addition, not physically, conceptually. The universe is not struggling to keep up. It is enforcing a rule. And that rule is not about matter. Particles obey it. Light saturates it, but neither creates it. The limit exists, even if nothing moves. That's the part most explanations quietly avoid. If you removed all particles, all fields, all energy, the limit would remain, not as a measured value, but as a structural boundary. This means the speed limit is not a property of objects. It is a property of space and time themselves, which makes your original intuition dangerously incomplete. Because if speed were just about engines, there would be no reason for a universal maximum. Different objects would have different caps. Different mechanisms would break at different points. Instead, everything, massive or massless, collides with the same wall. That is not engineering. That is geometry. And geometry does not care how hard you push. So the next time you imagine going faster, ask a sharper question. Faster relative to what? Because the moment there is a limit that no effort can cross, motion is no longer just motion. It is a negotiation with the structure of reality, and reality does not negotiate. You've been told that motion is relative, no preferred frame, no absolute rest. Move smoothly, and you are justified in calling yourself stationary. That idea runs deep. It feels democratic. Physics agrees, almost. Because hidden inside relativity is something profoundly undemocratic. One quantity that refuses to be relative, speed. More precisely, one particular speed. You can disagree about how fast a car is moving. You can disagree about who is at rest. You can disagree about whose clock is ticking normally. But you cannot disagree about the speed of light. Every observer, every state of motion, every perspective, same number. This should bother you more than it does. In ordinary life, velocities add. If a train moves at 50 and you walk forward at 5, you move at 55. No mystery. If light behaved that way, Observers moving toward it would measure a higher speed. Observers running away would measure a lower one. That is what intuition demands. Relativity refuses. No matter how fast you chase a beam of light, it does not slow down for you. It does not wait. It does not acknowledge your effort. This is not a detail. It is a structural rebellion against common sense. Because once a single speed is invariant, motion itself becomes constrained. You still have relative velocities, but only within boundaries that preserve this special number. Velocities no longer add the way you think they do. They combine cautiously, as if avoiding something. And what they are avoiding is violation. The universe will tolerate disagreement about almost everything, except whether this speed is exceeded. That tells you something crucial. Relativity is not about motion being relative. It is about protecting one speed from relativity. Everything else bends to accommodate it. This is where the familiar story quietly breaks. You imagine relativity as freedom. No preferred reference frame, no absolute motion. In reality, it is discipline, a system built around a single inviolable limit. Once you accept that, the speed limit stops being a practical inconvenience and becomes a warning, a sign that space and time are not independent arenas where motion happens freely. They are constrained structures, rigged to preserve causal order. And if motion itself must reorganize to protect the speed, then speed is no longer just motion, it is architecture. Something is being held together. And to understand what that is, we have to look at what was sacrificed to make light special. You might think the speed of light is just a property of light, something photons happen to do. That is the last comfortable interpretation, because if light were merely fast, nothing else would have to change. Space could stay rigid, time could keep flowing evenly, motion could remain intuitive, but insisting that light's speed is the same for everyone breaks that entire arrangement. This is the point where physics stops negotiating with common sense. Imagine two observers passing each other in empty space, no landmarks, no preferred frame. They cross paths and emit a flash of light. Both measure it. Both get the same speed. This sounds harmless until you ask what had to adjust to make that possible. Because speed is distance divided by time. If the speed is fixed and observers disagree about motion, then distance and time cannot both remain fixed. One of them has to give. Relativity chooses both. This is where the abstraction begins. To preserve the speed limit, the universe allows observers to disagree about lengths, about durations, about what events happen at the same time, not as measurement errors, not as illusions, as facts. This is usually explained as a strange consequence, a weird side effect. That framing is backward. Space and time deform because the speed limit must be protected. They are not bending accidentally. They are bending on purpose. This is the cost. If you demand a universal speed, you must abandon universal time. You must abandon absolute distance. You must abandon a shared present. This is not a philosophical choice. It is a mathematical necessity. The familiar picture, a three-dimensional space evolving through a single global clock, cannot survive a speed that refuses to change. So reality discards it. Instead, space and time merge into something less intuitive but more disciplined, a structure where intervals adjust themselves so that the speed limit never breaks. From this perspective, time dilation and length contraction are not mysterious effects. They are bookkeeping corrections. Reality constantly recalculates itself to avoid a forbidden outcome. You think light is special because it is fast. That's wrong. Light is special because it reveals a constraint that was already there. The universe was always built this way. Light simply exposes it. Once you see that, you stop asking why space and time behave strangely. You start asking why you ever expected them to behave normally at all. You probably think time dilation is about clocks, bad clocks, mechanical quirks, signals taking longer to arrive. That interpretation is comfortable and wrong. Time does not slow down because clocks malfunction. Clocks slow down because time itself is no longer allowed to behave universally. This is the price reality pays to protect the speed limit. Imagine two identical clocks. One stays with you. One leaves at high speed and later returns. You already know the result. The traveling clock shows less time. The mistake is thinking something happened to the clock. Nothing did. The clock was honest. It measured exactly what existed along its path. What changed was time. In everyday life, you assume time is a background river. Events float in it. Motion happens inside it. Relativity breaks that image. Time is not a container. It is a dimension woven together with space. And motion through space consumes part of your capacity to move through time. This is not metaphor, it is accounting. There is a fixed budget enforced by the speed limit. Move faster through space and less remains for time. This is why the effect is not optional. It is not psychological. It is not about perception. Every physical process slows down together. Atomic vibrations, chemical reactions, biological aging. Nothing escapes because nothing sits outside time. You might be tempted to ask, which clock is really right? That question no longer makes sense. Each clock measures its own proper time, the time that exists along its trajectory through space-time. There is no master clock to appeal to, no universal heartbeat. This is where intuition finally fails completely. Two observers can separate, reunite, and disagree about how much time passed, and neither is mistaken. Not because truth is relative, but because time is not global. It is local. This destroys another hidden assumption, that the universe evolves synchronously. It doesn't. There is no single now sweeping across space, no cosmic present updating everywhere at once. The speed limit forbids it, because a universal now would require information to propagate infinitely fast, and that is not allowed. So time fractures, quietly, precisely. Each path through space-time carries its own duration, and the faster you move, the less duration you are allowed to carry with you. Time does not punish motion, it restructures itself around it. This is not a strange effect layered on top of reality. It is reality doing whatever is necessary to remain consistent. You probably still trust distance more than time. Clocks feel slippery, lengths feel solid. A meter stick seems harder to argue with than a second. That confidence will not survive, because distance collapses for the same reason time does, to keep the speed limit intact. When an object moves fast relative to you, it shortens. Not because it is compressed, not because forces act on it, because the universe refuses to let space and time stay independent. Length contraction is usually introduced as symmetry. Time slows, so space shrinks. That framing hides the deeper point. Distance is not a fixed property of objects. It is a relationship between events. To measure length, you must decide which 2 points exist at the same time. And relativity already took that luxury away from you. Different observers slice space-time differently. They disagree about simultaneity, so they disagree about length. This is not a disagreement about appearance. It is a disagreement about what counts as the object right now. At low speeds, the difference is negligible. Your intuitions survive. Near the speed limit, they fail catastrophically. An object moving close to the limit becomes shorter in the direction of motion, not because it is being damaged, but because its spatial extension is leaking into time. Space is not shrinking, it is reassigning dimensions. What you used to think of as length is partially converted into duration. This sounds abstract because it is, but it has consequences that are brutally concrete. If distance were absolute, you could outrun light by shortening the gap ahead of you. If simultaneity were universal, you could synchronize events across the cosmos. Both would break causality. So distance gives way. The universe does not protect objects, it protects order. And order requires that no observer can arrange events in a way that allows influence to travel faster than the limit. Length contraction is enforcement. It is space adjusting itself so that forbidden connections never form. By now, a pattern should be uncomfortable but clear. Whenever intuition threatens the speed limit, intuition loses. Time bends, distance yields, and what remains is not motion through space, but motion through a four-dimensional structure that cares only about what can affect what, which finally reveals what the speed limit really governs. By now, it should feel wrong to call this a speed limit. That phrase suggests traffic, crowding, motion being managed. That picture is misleading. What is actually being limited is influence. The universe does not care how fast something moves. It cares about what can cause what. Every event sits inside a structure of possible connections. Some events can affect others, most cannot. The speed limit draws the boundary. If an influence could propagate faster than that limit, cause and effect would lose their order. An effect could arrive before its cause, and not by paradox, but by geometry. This is the part that usually gets softened. It shouldn't. Once faster than limit influence is allowed, the concept of before becomes observer dependent. One observer sees A cause B. Another sees B cause A. There is no fix for this, no reinterpretation, no deeper mechanism waiting to rescue causality. The structure collapses. So the universe does the only thing it can. It forbids such connections, not dynamically, not by force, by geometry. Space-time is arranged so that each event carries a cone of possible futures. Outside that cone, influence is simply undefined, not blocked, not delayed, undefined. This is not a speed law layered on top of reality. It is the rule that defines which histories are allowed to exist. Light sits on the boundary because it marks the fastest possible causal connection. Not because photons are special messengers, but because the boundary needs a physical inhabitant. Everything slower lives inside the cone. Everything faster is not part of the universe's vocabulary. This reframes everything that came before. Time dilation is not about clocks. Length contraction is not about objects. They are bookkeeping tools that maintain causal order. The speed limit is not protecting matter. It is protecting meaning. Because without a consistent causal structure, there is no story the universe can tell about itself. No sequence, no evolution, no explanation. Events would exist without relationships. And a universe without relationships is indistinguishable from noise. So the limit is enforced everywhere, all the time, without exception. Not because the universe is cautious, but because it must be coherent, which leads to the final, uncomfortable realization. This limit was never an obstacle. It was the scaffolding that made reality possible at all. You might still feel tempted to ask why. Why this limit? Why this number? Why not faster? That question sounds reasonable. It isn't, because it assumes the universe could have chosen otherwise. The speed limit is not an add-on. It is not a rule selected from options. It is the consequence of a universe that allows structure at all. Remove it, and you don't get a faster cosmos. You get one without order. A universe where every event could influence every other event instantly has no before, no after, no persistence. Nothing can happen there. The speed limit is the reason happenings exist. It is the reason the universe can unfold instead of existing all at once. Seen this way, the limit is not restrictive. It is generous. It gives reality enough rigidity to be intelligible and enough flexibility to evolve. Space stretches, time bends, distance dissolves. All of that feels unsettling because it removes the props you rely on. But what replaces them is deeper. A universe that does not prioritize comfort or intuition, only consistency. There is something almost austere about this. Reality does not rush. It does not allow shortcuts. It does not permit exceptions, even in principle. It simply says, this far and no further, not to frustrate you, not to challenge you, but to ensure that cause can precede effect, that stories can have direction, that existence can have sequence. The speed limit is not a boundary you are trapped inside. It is the boundary that allows inside and outside to mean anything at all. And once you see that, you stop thinking of space as a place, time as a flow, and motion as a freedom. You begin to see reality as a carefully constrained permission, a universe that exists because it refuses to let everything happen at once. There is nothing arbitrary about that refusal. It is the quiet, invisible rule that makes reality possible.